Hi, I'm Dylan, and this is my good friend Reno.
Hey, I'm Reno.
And today we'll be talking about FPS games, or first-person shooter games. FPS games are typically where a group of people try to complete an objective, whether it be through getting the most amount of eliminations or capturing and holding an objective. Some different game modes could be capture the flag, king of the hill, domination, that sort of thing.
Yeah, in FPS, it'll be mainly online unless you get into the high level of competition. And the main thing you want to think about in FPS is the people you play with, because in FPS they make it basically impossible for you to win all by yourself, and that is why you want a reliable team that you can consistently play with.
They're heavily team balanced or team based.
Yeah, so it's kind of like a MOBA where you need a solid team. Otherwise, even if you're the greatest player of all time, you will not be able to win by yourself.
What are some ways to get into the high levels?
The only ways to get into the higher levels is to make a name for yourself and your team. And to do that, they have a point system of online competitions. And the main ways to find those are just to look up tournaments for FPS and the game you want. Not every single game obviously has that, because if they had to keep track of 20 different games and 20 different and like 200,000 teams, it would be basically impossible for them to keep it. So they only keep the most relevant games at the moment for these. So if you want to play like an old game, you're kind of out of luck. I'm sorry, but you have to play what's the most popular and what's on the mainstream.
Some of the games that are currently played could be Overwatch, I think, Rainbow Six Siege, CS:GO. Is Splatoon still?
Oh yeah, that one's
Splatoon. Um, there's a million of them. It's a really wide genre.
And as well, if you really want to make a name for yourself, there are games that are hosted by the creators themselves. Like Nintendo, they hold tournaments for Splatoon, and Apex Legends, they hold tournaments for their own game as well. So those are two games if you want to get into those. Actually, also Vanguard does that as well. So if you get into any of those two games, you can consistently rely on tournaments to be played, and they have the biggest cash prizes and easiest way to make a name for yourself.
And now we'll be showing an example of gameplay. We'll be playing Overwatch.
Here's some gameplay of Dylan playing Overwatch. We will be going over the objectives of games and how many people usually consist in your team. First, we're talking about Overwatch. In Overwatch, you usually play two types of game modes. One would be to get the most amount of eliminations, and one would be domination. Getting the most amount of eliminations is just taking out the enemy team as much as possible, and domination is trying to take over a high point, which would be located on the map, and your team has to be in it without the enemies being within that area. What sets Overwatch apart from most other games is the characters' abilities and their loadouts. Some people start off that they want to go all in and be in the front lines attacking people, and you'd have some people who wants to be on top of rooftops attacking people from afar. Next, Dylan will be talking about Valorant.
Valorant is another team-based shooter. It's usually 5 versus 5. A lot of the same objectives and game modes as Overwatch. The characters in this game also have abilities, but unlike Overwatch, you get to choose which weapons you use. Overwatch, it's all set for you, where the characters are based around their weapons. Oh, another game really similar to Valorant that's also super popular is CS:GO. It's essentially the same thing as Valorant, but you have no abilities. Next, we'll be talking about Splatoon.
In Splatoon, what makes it different is that it's all basically party modes, and you choose your loadout from the get go. Uh, the loadouts you pick at the beginning are 100% up to you. You can pick anything you want, whether it be a paintbrush that you scroll around the floor trying to get the most amount of ink everywhere, or a long distance weapon that you can use to try and either get a lot of area from afar or just to take down people. It's all situational, and you should look at tier lists, which are describing in weapons based on how good they are in each area of the games. But the most part about it is the objectives, and in the objectives, objectives. It's either you take over a tower and try and hold onto it for the most amount of time, and it'll be moving with you while you're on it, so that makes it pretty fun. It's all party modes, so it can switch up sometimes. Sometimes you get to pick the game mode, but it's usually set in the rules. Next, Apex.
Apex is an outlier here because it's a battle royale style game where there's one centralized map that everybody plays on. Uh, for most battle royale style games, you'll start in maybe a plane or something in the air, and you and your teammates and all of your enemies you'll drop out of your plane or whatever you're flying in, and you'll skydive down to the map, and from there you'll find things just scattered around the map. It's typically random what you'll get. From game to game, you most likely will not have the same loadout. Games can last anywhere from 2 minutes to half an hour. It really depends on where you land, who your teammates are, who you fight against, all that type of stuff. And then in all battle royale games, there's some kind of restricting force, like a ring or walls that slowly move in to force the players to get closer and closer together so that games don't last forever and things get pretty heated during the end of a game because all of the players are in a fairly small, confined circle of space.
And this concludes our episode on FPS games. Just a little summary of what we went over. Some of the games to get into could be Overwatch, like we played, Rainbow Six Siege, CSGO, Splatoon, Vanguard, Apex Legends. There's a million games. And FPS games are very much about reaction time and accuracy, and a lot of strategy is involved in it too.
And be sure to catch us every other week on the Creative Communications on YouTube, the channel.